Manchester City keep winning, and with every victory, the same uncomfortable question grows louder across football. Is this dominance the natural evolution of the sport, or is it quietly killing the competition that made football magical in the first place? Because when City step onto the pitch now, it no longer feels like a contest, it feels like a formality. And that is exactly why fans from Manchester to Madrid, from London to Liverpool are starting to feel uneasy. Because football was never supposed to feel predictable, and yet week after week, City dismantle opponents with cold precision, as if the outcome was decided long before kickoff. And this is not just about trophies anymore. It is about power, control, and a system that seems impossible to catch up to. Because while other big clubs rise and fall, rebuild and collapse, City just keep moving forward like a perfectly engineered machine. And that is where the fear begins. Because when one club becomes this efficient, this consistent, and this untouchable, it forces us to ask whether the idea of competition at the top level still truly exists. Because once upon a time, dynasties came in cycles. United ruled, then fell. Barcelona ruled, then declined. Real Madrid had their eras. Bayern had their reigns. But all of them eventually cracked under pressure, ego, finances, or exhaustion. Yet City seem immune to all three because their structure is not emotional. It is not reactive. It is calculated and deeply institutional. And that changes everything because Pep Guardiola did not just build a great team, he built a footballing ecosystem where every player, every signing, every rotation is part of a larger design, and that design does not rely on individual brilliance alone. It creates it, amplifies it, and replaces it seamlessly. And that is why when De Bruyne gets injured, City still win. When Haaland is quiet, City still win. When key defenders rotate, City still win, because the system is the star. And that is terrifying for everyone else, because how do you compete with a system that corrects its own weaknesses in real time while your club is still arguing about transfers or managers or philosophies? And this is where the conversation gets a money argument that critics often fall back on, because plenty of clubs have spent fortunes and failed miserably. The difference with City is how that money is used, how risks are minimized, how long-term planning overrides short-term panic, and how every decision aligns with a single footballing vision. And that vision has been protected and refined for over a decade. And when you give a club that level of stability, resources, and elite coaching, the result is exactly what we are seeing now. A team that does not just win, but normalizes winning to the point where losing feels shocking. And that is dangerous for competition, because fear spreads quickly in football. Once teams believe they cannot win, they already have not. And you can see it in matches before they even start. Opponents sit deeper, defend narrower, stop believing earlier, and City punish that hesitation mercilessly because confidence is their most lethal weapon, and it is built on years of success that reinforce itself like a feedback loop. And the Premier League, which once prided itself on chaos, unpredictability, and weekly upsets, now feels like a stage where City perform while everyone else auditions for second place. And that perception matters, because football is not just about reality, it is about belief. And when belief fades, the sport loses something essential, and fans start to disengage, not loudly, but subtly. Fewer expectations, fewer dreams, fewer moments where the impossible feels possible. And this is not just a Premier League issue, because City dominance sends shockwaves across Europe as well. Because when one club masters modern football at this level, it exposes the inefficiencies and instabilities of traditional giants. Clubs like Barcelona and Juventus have struggled financially and structurally. Real Madrid remain powerful, but even they must adapt. Bayern dominate domestically but face tactical challenges in Europe. And meanwhile, City stand there as the blueprint of what modern elite football looks like. And that creates a widening gap, because to compete with City, you do not just need great players, you need time, patience, alignment, and enormous institutional discipline, things that most big clubs no longer have, because modern football is chaotic. Owners change, managers rotate, fan pressure explodes, social media amplifies every mistake, and City exist almost outside that storm, insulated by a project that was allowed to mature quietly before exploding into full dominance. And now the consequences are visible, because young fans grow up expecting City to win titles, the same way previous generations expected United or Madrid to do so. And that expectation shapes the routine, and rivalries lose their edge when the balance of power tilts too far for too long. And this is why some fans secretly hope City lose, not out of hatred, but out of longing for uncertainty, because uncertainty is the soul of sport, and when outcomes feel pre-written, even excellence becomes less thrilling. And yet here is the paradox, because what City are doing is not illegal within the rules as they exist. It is not accidental, and it is not luck. It is football excellence taken to its logical extreme, and punishing them for being better feels wrong, and rewriting the rules because one club mastered them feels equally uncomfortable. So the sport is stuck in a strange dilemma: admire City or fear what they represent, because if everyone tries to copy them, football could become even more homogenized, even more system-driven, even less spontaneous, and that raises philosophical questions about where the game is heading, because Pep Guardiola's influence already dominates elite football. Pressing, positional play, build-up patterns, automatisms, these are now universal concepts, and City are simply the most refined version of that ideology. And when one ideology becomes this dominant, creativity can suffer, individuality can be constrained, and risk-taking can be discouraged. And yet City still manage to produce moments of beauty, because within their structure, players like Haaland, Foden, De Bruyne, Silva still express themselves, but always within controlled limits. And that balance is something other clubs struggle to replicate, because it requires absolute trust between players and manager, and absolute patience from ownership, and absolute clarity in recruitment. And that combination is extremely rare. And so the fear persists that City are not just on a winning streak, but at the beginning of an era that could stretch so long that competition itself could be redefined, where success for others means simply keeping up rather than overtaking. And that is why every City victory feels heavier than a normal victory, because it is not just 3 points, it is another brick in a wall that rivals fear they will never climb. And yet history tells us that no dominance lasts forever. Football always finds a way to rebalance itself through regulation, financial shifts, tactical revolutions, or internal decay. And perhaps City's fall will come one day, but the real question is how much damage or transformation will occur before that happens. Because if the league becomes a procession for too long, the next generation of fans might not remember a time when the title race felt alive. And that would be the true loss. Not trophies, not records, but imagination and hope and break and miracle. And Manchester City right now represent order, control, and inevitability. And whether that is the future of football or a phase that sparks a reaction will define the next decade of the sport. Because the answer to whether City's winning streak is the end of big club competition depends on what the rest of football does next, whether rivals evolve, innovate, and challenge the model, or resign themselves to chasing shadows and accepting that perfection has already been engineered. And until that answer